What up, y'all? On today's episode, we have Sebastian Kreindel. This is the final episode of the interviews I did vagabonding around the United States during the summer of 2018, visiting family and friends. Sebastian and I taught together at DC International School during the 17-18 school year. Sebastian was the head of the PE department. Technically, he was my boss. He interviewed me, he hired me, and I was under his auspices during the 17-18 school year. He's an awesome dude. The vast majority of, I guess all of the interviews, all of the episodes that have been posted thus far are with family and friends that I've known for years, if not decades. And like I said, I met Sebastian right before the 2017-2018 school year started, and a year later I felt like this guy was one of my best friends in the world, and I wanted to get his perspectives on life recorded and uploaded for the world to hear. Sebastian's off teaching and living in China now. I don't know. He's a very cool, amazing dude with some awesome perspective on life that you'll get to hear in this interview. So I hope you enjoy. Here's my boy Sebastian. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Sebastian Kreindel. What's up, brother?
I'm chilling like a villain. How you doing?
I'm good, man. How you feeling? You're about to move to China.
Feeling like it's not all fitting in the space that it needs to fit, but it will.
How much stuff are you bringing?
Too much stuff.
Like bags-wise? Like four suitcases, 5 suitcases?
It was going to be 2 checked luggage, but now I think I'm going to have to do 3 checked luggage. Mm-hmm. But it is 2 years of my life, so I might as well.
Mm-hmm. How you feeling? Are you excited? Are you nostalgic? Is there any sadness at all? How long? Well, first off, how long have you been in DC?
I've been in DC full-time for 5 years.
Okay.
And I'm nostalgic a little bit. I think there's a lot of things I'm going to miss. I'm going to miss my house. I'm going to miss my friends. I feel like I've seen a lot of people come and go, but I've kind of been here that whole time just as like a root. But now it's nice to, let my little sapling fly into the air and move on to wherever I go next. I'm excited. I'm excited too.
Cool, man. Have you ever been to China? You ever been to Asia, that part of the world?
I went to Hong Kong for like 3 days.
Okay, yeah, I remember you told me that.
It was good.
Yeah, man. Dude, it's an awesome move. I respect the hell of it. It's something I would do. It's something that, I maybe wouldn't do it for teaching, but I would definitely move across, the other side of the planet. I admire it a lot. I think it's what everyone should do, at some point in their adult life.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into who you are. So can you just give us some background on who you are, where you were born, where you're from, where you grew up, that kind of shit?
All right.
And then just kind of lead us up generally to where you are now.
All right, so I was born in 1990 in Boston, and I grew up there, went to, elementary school, middle school, high school, all in Newton. And then I decided, hey, I'm going to get the heck out of Massachusetts. And I swung down to Virginia to do college at William & Mary. Mm-hmm. And I was there for 4 years of undergrad and 1 year for my master's. And then after that, I was like, hey, I'm going to D.C. And I guess I've been here ever since.
All right. And what did you study at William & Mary?
History.
History.
Yeah.
And master's in history as well?
No, master's in curriculum and instruction. But it's really funny because I was going in there totally thinking I was going to do like pre-med. I'd worked all these internships at the National Institute of Health, at Harvard, at the Children's Hospital, doing all of this like lab work. And then I got to school, and the only textbook that I enjoyed reading was my history textbook. Uh-huh. And then I was like, well, I might as well.
Dude, I kind of had a similar thing. I didn't know really what I was going to do getting into school. I thought maybe journalism, because the only thing I knew about was sports. So I thought, I guess I'll be like a sports writer. The only plan I had as a kid was to be a professional athlete. And then I had real bad OCD that kind of derailed any thinking of planning ahead, and would just kind of try to survive the day. And so I just kind of stuck to sports as a distraction. And once I got to college, I was like, well, I guess sports is all I know. And then they made us read a book, Mountains Beyond Mountains, before we went into college. Is all about this dude, Dr. Paul Farmer, who's saving kids in Haiti and shit. So I was like, oh man, that sounds awesome. I want to save people's lives. And so I was like, I'll do pre-med, and I took one biology and one chemistry, and I was like, fuck this. Just science never interested me. But as soon as the same thing, as soon as I started reading history shit or any sort of international affairs texts, economics, I was like, this is at least what I'm interested in. So that's something I ended up going with. When you were a kid growing up in Newton, what did you like? What were your dreams of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Well, if you look at my 5th grade yearbook, it would say that I wanted to be a scientist. Okay. If you looked at the 8th grade yearbook... I
like this. I ask this question pretty much to everyone, and it's exactly what I want. Like, how does the dreams progress as you get older? Okay. 5th grade scientist, 8th grade...
It was a...
Ninja.
A virologist. I was
really you got a little more specific.
I was really into reading about viruses.
I don't even know what a virologist is when you said that.
Okay, so basically... There's really bad diseases that you've heard of, Ebola, you've heard of smallpox, These are like really dangerous viruses, and I was really interested in like studying what makes them work the way they work, and like how would we treat these types of outbreaks if they were to occur. I think that also helped that my mom was an epidemiologist and kind of like pushed me in
guided you in that direction.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I started getting all my summer internships too, was like, all right, well, I'm into this is lab work. I was reading a lot of books about it, and a lot of the books had discussions of what's happening in the labs, and then I realized that it probably wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be after working in the labs, and I was like...
When were you doing these internships? Like in high school?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. You were on point. I was doing internships in high school. I was working at like the local deli.
Yeah, I was... So when I was 15, I was working at the Children's Hospital running research on mice brains. So it was immunohistochemistry. So
at 15?
Yeah.
You fucking Doogie Howser? What?
Yeah, something like that. And so, sacrifice the mouse, remove the brain, slice it
Sacrifice?
Up. Yeah, it's a sacrifice. It's a mouse is sacrifice.
To the gods of science.
Yeah. And then after that, I did a little bit of work at the National Institute of Health with cryopreservation.
This is while you're still in high school?
This is still in high school. This is the next year. I think this was when I was a sophomore in high school.
Was there a National Institute of Health in Boston or something?
No, I was down here in D.C.
You came for an internship... Like, live-away internship.
I was living here in this house.
Oh, that's right.
My mom was living here in D.C. already.
And your dad was living in Boston.
Exactly.
Okay, I got you. Jesus.
So then I did some cryopreservation work. And then I did a little bit of work with, like, the head veterinarian of an animal facility. And then I did, again, a little bit more research on mice and rat brains in Harvard when I was in Boston.
Fuck. And this is all in high school?
This is all in high school.
And so it wasn't just like me, I happened to read one book about a doctor who saves people's lives, and I'm like, I'll be a doctor. You had some, like, science background.
Yeah, I also really messed up my leg when I was younger, when I was 13. So I broke it pretty bad. And
tell that story, because you have a gnarly scar still, right?
Yeah, I got a pretty nice scar. Yeah, maybe like 12 inches, something like that.
Yeah.
I was playing soccer. I was 13. We had a penalty kick, and Ali Garfinkel took the kick.
Fucking Ali, man.
He was a really great player.
Oh, it was a
and
guy.
he puts the ball.
Thought you playing co-ed at 13.
No.
Step your shit up.
I went up to him right beforehand. It was a tie game, maybe 1-1, 0-0. I say, Ali, don't even kick it fast. Just put it in the corner. This guy's not going to get there. And he somewhat listened to me because he put it in the bottom corner, but he just like rifled it in there, just like a sniper. And it hit the inside post. Like, it was clearly a goal. It went in. It went a yard into the goal, hit the back post, and then came out. And the referee, who was Steven Zeitler's older brother, who apparently actually made a career out of becoming a professional referee, missed this call completely. And most of my team was celebrating, but I realized that he didn't make the call. So I was just still playing it. And the ball is, like, rebounded out. It was maybe, like, near the 18 on the side. And so I just started chasing it. And one of the opponents was chasing it alongside me, and he was maybe going to beat me there by like a hair. So I jumped in the air, getting ready to just deflect this ball. He was trying to clear it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to jump in the air, deflect it with my leg back as like a cross. And while I was midair, I heard this pop.
Oh, shit.
And so I fell to the ground, and that was exactly my thought was,
oh, shit.
Oh, shit. I was yelling a lot, and then I kind of went...
Mid-air, though?
I heard the pop mid-air. There was no contact. It was just, I had it... Well, it turns out... well, I was on the ground there. And I was, I thought, oh my God, did I like dislocate my knee? Did something
what
just
was the
pop
actual
out of
injury?
place? I was screaming, and then eventually ambulance came. I had to take off my cleats, my socks, my shin pads, which hurt a lot. And they got me to the hospital, and turns out that inside of my femur had replaced most of the bone was a benign tumor.
Oh, right. I remember you told me this story.
So the tumor made the bone so weak that just pretty much part of my bone just shattered.
Oh, shit.
And so they went in there and they put in a metal plate and a bunch of screws and a bone graft, and they hoped really hard that it would grow back into being a real bone, and it did, which was really lucky.
You're a real boy now.
Yeah, well, I'm a real boy with Inspector Gadget.
Oh, you just still have metal in there?
Yeah, it's got some metal. I had to take a little bit of it out just because it was interfering with some of my physical activity, so I had maybe 7 or 8 screws. I still got them upstairs. I held on to them. But I had to get 3 of them out because they were coming out on the other side of the bone and digging into the interior side of my leg muscle. Yeah.
But now you can dunk, so it's sick.
Yeah. I mean, it's like one of those little kid basketball hoops, but sometimes I just throw them up there and just,
Yeah. All right, so we got sidetracked there a little bit. So you had good science background. So you're thinking, going into William & Mary, I'm going to do science.
Yeah.
And so you get there, and then you start taking like other classes, like prereq classes and shit. Mm-hmm. And you're like, nah, history's so much cooler.
I just thought, wow, I can sit down and read this thing and not feel bored or, trying to procrastinate as much as I can. I can just sit down and enjoy reading this and learning about it. I didn't enjoy the process of like memorizing mitosis and meiosis.
Right.
Memorizing that type of stuff just wasn't that exciting for me.
Right.
Memorizing history and stories was a lot more exciting.
Dude, I totally feel like I was the exact same way, dude. When I would read my science text, I'd just be like, I'm forcing this. Like, I'm having to, like, actively force my concentration. When I'd read international affairs text, just soak that shit up.
But I will admit, I did really enjoy learning about, like, geology and physical geography. Those things, definitely.
Okay.
It was a science that definitely got me excited to learn.
Yeah, for me, it seems like most people, you're like either a science dude or you're, I guess, a social science dude. Would you consider history like a social science? I consider
history a social science.
Okay, yeah. International affairs, I consider a social science too, and even like economics.
Sociology, economics, psychology, history.
It seems to me that most people are either, hard science or social science. It's interesting, I interviewed Jordan yesterday, I think you met a couple times, and he did law school. Did not like being a lawyer, but like loved politics, interned with Obama and shit, and like really loved it. So he went to law school, and then he studied business and like economics in college. And then after he went to law school, he enjoyed law school, but like hated being a lawyer. So then he took some like, spirit quest journey and decided he wanted to go to med school. His dad's a doctor. And now he loves science too. Like whenever I go over there, like, the dude will watch like YouTube videos on genetics for fun, and so he's like, I feel like a rare case. I'm like, oh, this dude's interested in both. His like, he's got like, I guess like his left and right brain operating at the same time. It's weird. Okay, but so how did studying history morph into wanting to become a teacher? Where did that all come about?
I guess I thought a little bit about teaching when I was younger, just being in high school and just seeing what my teachers were like and kind of imagining myself in their shoes and how I would try to teach things or how I would do things differently. And when I got to, I think it was junior year of high school, I had this really awesome teacher. His name was Mr. Kozik, and I still keep in contact with him. He's a really great guy, yeah. And we did a really great assignment on social justice movements. And I guess I just felt really motivated by it, felt moved by it, felt compelled to be like a much more active citizen afterwards. And then from there, when I was already deciding on history, one of the things that I decided to focus on was social justice movements in the United States. And actually, one of my thesis arguments was basically doing an analysis of 100 years of history at the College of William & Mary, where they had the newspaper had celebrated their centennial anniversary. So what I did was I went through 100 years of history and tried to dissect exactly what the perspective of race and race relations were during those years.
Okay.
And then also I really liked studying Yugoslavia. But so I thought what would be something cool that I could do with those with studying that was, well, teaching people what to do if they feel that they're not being, supported or being treated fairly by, a government or an oppressor or whatever it is.
Right.
And what's the right way to act in this type of situation?
So like your study of history not only was inspired by just the interest in what has happened in the past, but also it seems like there's this like boiling moral sentiment to it, where it's like you're trying to use history to improve the future.
Exactly.
Cool, dude. But that teacher that kind of inspired you, you said that was high school?
Yeah.
So although you were kind of science-centric in high school, did you have like this inkling in the back of your mind that maybe I'll become a teacher at some point? Was that like...
Not exactly. I think it was mostly just like a social do-gooder.
Right.
Like I wanted to do good to a society, whether it was through like education or whether it was through teaching or whether it's, through designing a sustainable building or whatever it is. I wanted to like make it be something that would be positive.
And when you got to college, were you thinking, okay, that's what I want to do? Like whether or not I'm studying science or studying history, I want to use those skills that I gained to like have a positive impact on society?
Yeah, I think always my idea was to have a positive impact on society.
Whether or not you were going to be a doctor, and then you switched to history. When you switched to history, did you have like a specific career in mind?
Yeah, teacher. Immediately.
Almost immediately. Okay, I got you. So you knew, okay, I'm going to finish up my undergrad in history, then I'm going to get my master's in education so I can become a teacher. That plan kind of started to formulate itself?
That started formulating itself, yeah.
Around like what, sophomore, junior year? Or
sophomore year, yeah.
Sophomore year?
So.
And did you know, like...
We didn't have to declare our majors until the end of our sophomore year.
No, neither did we.
I mean, there was a lot of time of figuring things out, or if I wanted to go back, I could go back. But I had like an idea, and I felt good about the direction of it. But, I got a little bit of backlash from my mom, who had been kind of raising me as a scientist
right?
the whole time.
Yeah, and it seemed like everything was going smoothly until you got off to college.
I know.
Damn, so did you know you're going to have to get your master's? Did you know that was going to be part of the deal?
I knew that at some point I'd have to get the master's, and William & Mary had like a 5-year plan. So I started taking master's classes my senior year, and I did one summer there to take 1 or 2 classes. So it really ended up saving me a little bit of money instead of having to do like a 2-year program or anything like that.
Because did you ever consider just majoring straight in education? Was that an option?
The thing is, most states require you to have a master's degree after a certain amount of years anyways. So it's, pay it now or pay it later type thing. And I just figured...
And they had the 5-year program.
And they had the 5-year program. Yeah. So I could just go and get that done. At the end of my college experience, I was mostly ready to go. I still wanted to have, a little bit more fun. And I think college experiences are just about the most fun that you can have. You live super close to so many of your friends, your responsibilities, like your classes, maybe 15 hours a week and maybe another 20 hours a week of, studying, but you just have so much free time. And so by midpoint in grad school, I was just ready to go and start working, I think. But having that little bit of extra was nice too.
Yeah, I used
to go on 20-mile runs. I used to have enough time to just run.
20-mile runs?
20-mile runs.
Have you ever done a marathon?
Never done a marathon.
But you just go on 20-mile casual runs.
Me and my friend Terry, we started. I would do, maybe 13 miles. And
you're like, oh, I'm not tired.
And Terry was a really good runner. And so after that, we just had this route that was, the Williamsburg half marathon route. And then at one point you're supposed to turn back and go around. And we just kept on pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back. Until eventually we're doing 20, 21 miles. We come back to the house. I lived right across the street from the supermarket. So we buy all of the food and just go ham on cooking these delicious meals after, running for 3 hours and depleting everything out of our body.
Did you never think I could push it 6 more miles and I've done a marathon?
Yeah, of course.
Why didn't you just do it?
Because that wasn't a motivation for me. I'd never thought 26 miles.
I got you. Yeah, it is totally an arbitrary thing, right? About what is it,
it's the distance between the city of Marathon and the city of Athens.
Right, yeah.
And basically the story is, I don't remember the runner's name, but the Persians were attacking, and so they had to go give news that the attack was coming. I think this was the movie 300? It's kind of like based off of that idea. They have to go give the warning.
It's totally arbitrary. So actually, that makes more sense. If for your personal goals, I guess it'd be more like make more sense to do like multiples of 10. Like I've done 20, now I got to do 30. Then I got to do 40.
No.
Then I got to do 50.
No.
They got these ultra marathons now where people are running like 100, 200 miles straight.
Yeah.
Fucking nuts.
Yeah, but they probably have like some type of condition where they get like a type of runner's high where
apparently it's totally a mental thing.
It's totally mental.
Like apparently after like, I think it's like 30 or 50 miles, like the performance between men and women totally just like diminishes. Yeah. And so it's just like whose mind is stronger.
Have you ever read Open by Andre Agassi?
No. Dude, I've read like 3 books in my life.
Okay, well, Andre Agassi is like a super incredible athlete and just a really interesting character as well. Because when he talks about him playing tennis, he's like, he broke me.
Right.
And it's like as soon as that mental aspect of like, breaking, he broke the set or he broke whatever, but it breaks that like little mental piece inside of you. Yeah. Where it's like, if you walk once, I think in a half marathon, you're going to walk more than once. Right. Nobody just walks once. Right. So if you're don't walk at all. Right. Just keep running. Right. If you're having pain and you're injured, please stop and go see a medical professional. But if you, are just like stomach cramp or whatever it is, like don't stop.
Yeah, dude. I think there's a lot to be said for that in life in general, man. And that's something I'm like, I used to be a lot more hardcore in my early 20s, especially during college. I think there's like this inspiration to where like I'd come through a decade of like battling this OCD that like drove me almost to the point of suicide at some points in my adolescence. And then I kind of like broke through that and I was on this like fucking high for 5 years where it was like I'm grinding, I'm not stopping. And that carried me through second half of college into my first years of teaching down to doing some Central America, doing nonprofit work. And then at some point over the last like 5 years, it's kind of stopped, man. And I've gotten like, not lazy in a sense, but I don't know, maybe it's just...
Apathetic?
Apathetic in some ways, definitely jaded in terms of nonprofit and education work. And so I'm trying to like rediscover that like determination, that like, fuck it, man, I don't give a shit. I'm like identifying a goal and I'm achieving it and I'm not stopping the walk. So I'm glad you brought that up, man. You're a great podcast guest. You're doing great so far. Keep it up, man. Thanks. I'm trying to rediscover that, man. That like pushing past that breaking point until you get that second wind. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to rewind a little bit to go back to your childhood, and then we're going to get back into education in a second. So tell me about your childhood. You mentioned before that your mom lived in D.C., your dad lived in Boston. So at some point they divorced. Tell us about your childhood. How was that?
All right. So my family, I think... My parents separated maybe when I, 96. I think they were divorced in 97. And so I'd basically switch houses every week with my sister. 1 week at my dad's house, 1 week at my mom's house, 1 week at my dad's house.
And you're all in Boston at this?
And we were in Boston. He lived in Newton and she lived in West Roxbury. Mm-hmm. And so switching off every week, which was fine. And I had, my sister and I kind of did it together. And the houses, even though they were 2 neighboring towns, were actually super close. Got to continue going to the same schools as I'd been going the whole time because my dad still lived in my hometown. Mm-hmm. And then at one point, my mom she'd gotten a master's in epidemiology from the School of Public Health at UMass. And from there, she ended up doing a bunch of research on rabies and Lyme disease and all these different really cool, West Nile virus, Eastern equine encephalitis, just a lot of tracking of these diseases. And eventually she kind of got into a program that Harvard was doing with mad cow disease. And from there, when that program ended or, the grant for that ended, she ended up taking a job for the Department of Agriculture, and part of that meant that she had to come to D.C. So I don't think it was an easy move for her. I think it was really tough. It was, but it was the right move. So she came down here and she bought this house that we're living in right now, hanging out in. And so I'd come here and I'd spend my summers here. Okay. And then I'd hang out. She'd come up during, every other weekend or as much as she could.
What was that process like where deciding that you were going to stay with your dad full time? Was it like a school decision? Was it a family decision? How did that work?
I think it was a school decision. I think I was maybe freshman, sophomore in high school. I didn't want to just move to DC and just, leave behind all my friends and all that. So I think, I've been at school with the same group of kids essentially since I was 5, and when you blend with new schools, you get new kids. But that was kind of like my home base at the time. And so for me, it was important to kind of like finish it up there and then figure out where I'm going. Plus, the public school system that I was in was like a great public school system. Coming to DC, I wasn't going to go to DC public schools. So where would I have gone? Well, I would have gone to a private school. How much would that have cost? Is it worth another $20,000 a year to go to private school here? Probably not.
Were you aware at all that there were issues in your parents' relationship when that all started breaking up? I know you were only like 6 or 7.
Not really. No,
Do you have a conception of like what divorce was and how did all that go down? Because my parents got divorced when I was 2.
Yeah. No,
actually, they were never married.
Honestly, Mom. It feels like. I mean, I remember them being together, but it feels like most of the time. Of what I can like remember is like them actually not being together, and it was just like such a normalized thing for that to be the case, and it wasn't really an issue. It was okay, it's Monday, so on Monday I switch houses and I go to Mom's house, or on next Monday, okay, going back to Dad's house. And you always have to wear the same clothes that you wore the Monday before, so that. Every time you got a birthday, you got 2 birthdays. Every time,
2 Christmases and shit.
Every time you lost a tooth, you got two tooth fairies. Yeah, you got some good things from that. But
So was it when you look back in your childhood, was it like harmonious, that situation? Because I know for a lot of kids that can be tough, having the joint custody, bouncing back and forth between houses. How do you look back on your childhood?
I think that there was obviously like a rift in the relationship between my mom and my dad, which at times was like more chill and at times was less chill.
Right.
Sometimes you could feel like you were in the middle of a situation.
Right.
Which could be kind of painful. But I guess you don't really get to pick the situation that you like put in. It's just something that happens, and it's happening because both people are unhappy with where they were or the relationship that they had. And so that, when you look back on it, I guess like how I'm doing now is like, well, I hope that they both were able to find like the happiness or whatever it was that they were looking for once they got out of that relationship.
Yeah. What was their relationship like post-divorce and then up until now? Like, has it changed at all?
I don't think that they speak regularly by any means. I think that they would talk and see each other when
y'all
my
were involved?
Sister and I were in school, or they my sister's wedding was the last time they probably saw each other. And even then they like disagree with how things are going to be. So it was like, oh well, one of them will say, well, I'm gonna pay for my guests, and the other one's like, okay, well, I'll pay for my guests.
I got
so
you.
It's just like,
right,
they're not trying to split costs. Like whatever, they're like, hey, I'm gonna pay for.
Right. How was your relationship with each of them growing up?
It was great. I mean, they're both so different. My dad is like super type A, organized. Every time that we go to a soccer game, we'd always show up 30 minutes early, have the printout of exactly where the fields are, enough time to warm up, and, all that. And
you're like that.
With my mom, it was we would leave the house maybe 10 minutes before the game, not have the field directions, not know which field in the town we were going to. We'd have to go there and be like, hey, do you know where our team is playing?
Right.
And just ask random people on like the street where the fields were.
Which approach do you prefer?
I think that there's some things that I want to have like a little bit more order and, understanding of where I'm going to be and when. If like I have like a set time, or like when I go to my soccer games now, sometimes I might be a couple minutes late, but I know where I'm going.
Right.
And if I'm a little bit late, it's because I'm running late. It's not like, a repeated thing. But I think That's just one thing. I don't mean to trash my mom for taking me late to our soccer.
No, I think there's a lot of
there were a
beauty.
lot of soccer games. There were a lot.
And I also think there's a lot of beauty in that kind of attitude. I mean, as long as it doesn't bother you. I like this kind of more laissez-faire. I'm not like that. I'm pretty type A and organized and punctual and shit like that. But it like maybe too much so sometimes. Yeah. And so I've tried to make a concerted effort, and you've seen me do it. Like when we'll hang out, sometimes I'm like, dude, we just gotta fucking chill. We just gotta step back and chill. Don't worry about the details. Just let it happen. But that's me making an effort to be that way.
Yeah.
So I think there is some value in that. And also, tell your mom's from Argentina, right?
Yeah, so is my dad.
You're both from Argentina.
Yep.
Okay, so I was wondering if that was maybe like a cultural thing.
Yeah, in Argentina, you show up late.
Dude, hanging out with Latinos, man, is... I hate the stereotype, but I'm sorry, man. I've had extensive experience with Latinos, both in this country and in Latin American countries, and it's a totally different attitude in terms of, like, punctuality and, like... organization and shit like that. But once again, I think there's value in that. I've tried to incorporate that into my lifestyle. But for people like us that probably more naturally are type A, it can be super frustrating.
First time I was meeting up with these second cousins in Argentina. I met them when I was a kid, but it'd been a while since we'd seen each other, and we were all going to meet up for dinner at 9:00. And so we get there, we ring the doorbell, and my cousin, or second cousin, he couldn't believe it. He goes, literally, when we say 9:00, we mean 10, 10:15, 10:30.
Yeah.
That's what we mean. But all of a sudden, I'm looking at my computer. It says 8:59. I hear the doorbell. I look back. It says 9:00. You Americans show up on time. He's like, he couldn't believe how like precise we were. But that was my mom, and she showed up perfectly.
Totally. It's like getting an invite to a party, dog. The party starts at 10. You don't want to be the dude that shows up at 10. You want to be the dude who shows up like 11, 11:30, rolling in. Everyone's got a drink in their hand already.
See, I don't feel compelled to when this party's at 10, show up at 10. I just show up whenever I feel ready to show up.
No, I know, dude. I've been to parties with you. We went to that Mardi Gras party the other day. We show up, but party starts at like 9. They say we show up at like 8:50. They're like chilling on the couch watching Netflix. The two people that live in the house.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great, though.
So you mentioned so let's get into Argentina thing real quick. Now we're kind of on that topic. So what has been your relationship with Argentina, Argentine culture, the language of Spanish? Like, how did your parents incorporate that into your life growing up?
I think it was just kind of like an immersion thing. So at home, we only ever spoke Spanish.
Okay. And
we had a lot of Argentine foods pretty much all the time. When I was watching soccer with my dad, we'd watch Boca Juniors. You know, even before he then later in life got more into like Barcelona and like other teams. But for us, it was always about Argentina soccer, playing Argentine card games. We play a game called Truco.
Right.
When we did barbecue, we didn't do like an American style barbecue.
We did an
asado. Yeah. So that was always definitely a part of our cultural identity.
They were both born in Argentina, right?
They were both born in Argentina.
And then how often would you go back?
Every year.
Every year you go back and visit?
Yeah, essentially.
Tight. When was the last time you were back there?
2 years ago.
Okay. So you are, like, that's part of who you are.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I was confused because I thought I was Argentine.
Right. Well, you are, I guess.
I'm American. I'm USA.
Yeah, and you look very American. I mean, all Argentinians look super European. Yeah. But you spoke Spanish in the house and stuff. That's like...
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see how that could be confusing. Like, wait, what am I?
Yeah, and then I realized that I'm not Argentine because I just... Every time I go to Argentina and I have to like relearn like the bus system to get around, I'm like, oh wait, an Argentine would know how to get around. Like, would know how to do this. Actually, I was at I wrote my college essay about this experience that I had when I was at a Boca Juniors soccer game. It was my first Boca Juniors game. I'd been to an Argentina game years before when they played against Chile, but against it was Boca San Lorenzo, and I was there with my dad and my cousin. And I've been watching this team my whole life, and I knew all the players and the backstories of the players. And beforehand we had an asado, and so I we're eating the food, drinking Argentine beer, watching Argentine soccer, and I was like, all right, cool, like this is it. This is like the Argentine soccer experience.
Yeah.
And then I had this understanding of that. Oh, this is like totally a part of my identity.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the game's going and Boca's losing 2-1, and they start singing all these songs the whole game, the whole time. And I don't know any of these songs, but my dad, who hasn't, been to a soccer game in 20 years, he still knows the songs. Right. And same with my cousin. And so I just realized, I was like, oh wow, there's like, even though I like eat the food and I speak the language and I know the players, like there's like this bit of culture that I just have never been a part of or never learned.
Right.
At the end of the game, I learned one song, so there's hope. But,
Do you feel like a longing for that? Do you feel like that's like a void?
I don't think it's a void. I just think it's a truth.
Right.
It's a truth. It's, hey, even though I've understood this aspect and this aspect and this aspect and this aspect, that doesn't mean that I, am Argentine or whatever, that bubble is. It just means that I kind of straddle two different cultures.
I got you.
I don't have full of one. I don't have full of the other. Maybe I do have full American culture.
No, I think you're pretty full American.
Yeah.
In what way would you possibly not be full American? Just because you spoke Spanish, because you were raised by two immigrants?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I guess. To me, I look at it differently. I'm like, damn, that's awesome. Like, he's full American, plus he's got a little extra. He's like 75% Argentinian, or at least 50. Or like someone like me, I'm just like, fuck, I'm just American. I don't even know where my family's from. Europe, probably England,
We looked up
Germany.
your last name, though, right? Wasn't it Dutch?
Yeah, Dutch or German or something. That makes sense. I always thought it was cooler if I could, like, someone told me at some point they thought it was Cherokee. So I really was running with that.
Yeah, I don't think Youngblood is Cherokee.
Yeah, I was hoping it was like, some Indian name or whatever, Chief Youngblood or something. Sounds a lot cooler. Some just fucking German dude.
You just do a DNA test to be sad.
I did. I did my 23andMe like a couple weeks ago, so I'm waiting on it.
All right, let me know how it goes.
I will.
Are you going to do a podcast for it?
Totally. A podcast reveal? Totally. I should do that. So you have one sibling, right?
One sibling.
Older sister?
Older sister.
How was your relationship with her growing up?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all didn't like fight ever or anything like that?
Obviously there's times that you're going to fight and there's times that you're going to argue because you're siblings, and that's just totally natural. But for the most part, we've been really good and, understanding of the other person and their experiences in their life. And like both of us are really open-minded, so if she wants to do something or if I want to do something, she's like, well, I wouldn't, but go ahead.
And y'all talk, I feel like, pretty regularly. I feel like you're on the phone with your sister, like, fairly regularly.
I think we talk at least once a week.
Oh, damn, yeah. That's a lot more than I talk to my sisters, and I consider myself really close to my sisters. I guess I do need to do a better job. How are your parents? How close are you with your parents, like, today?
Yeah, I think I talk with my mom probably every 3 or 4 days, and with my dad maybe around the same.
Damn, see, I need to get my shit together, man. Maybe that's part of how I've lost my way in the last few years, is, like, I've turned into this fucking independent, roaming, I keep using this term, like leaf in the wind. I consider myself super close to all my family, but honestly, and I consider myself super close to all of like my good friends, but like I don't do a good job of maintaining contact. I'll talk to my sisters like every 2 months.
Hey, I mean, if that maybe...
But it's not like we have like a distant relationship. Like we're very close and like have very intimate conversations, but I guess that's just kind of how I handle my shit. I've always been I'm horrible at texting, you know that. I'm horrible at being like a romantic partner because I don't fucking call you, and I'm cool if I don't see you for a week.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I am. So was there any influence from your parents, like in terms of like establishing principles and morals that would guide you to wanting to pursue like an altruistic career? And then specifically into education. Because you're very, let me get on a little monologue here about you. You're a very moral and principled person. Like, I love having you as a friend. And this is like that probably the highest compliment I could give. Is like, because I see you as an exemplar of like what a good person is. And so if I can be around you more, I'm like, okay, I can be a better person. And I feel that way. As our relationship has developed over the past year, we've known each other like almost a year now. Like, I feel like I've learned so much from you in terms of like what it means to just be a good dude.
Thanks, man.
How did you, like, okay, that being said, and I did this yesterday with my podcast with Jordan, I went over this, but like my mom, for instance, like was very explicit in like, not strict, but in a very like spiritual, holistic, like angelic way, taught me and my sisters to like be good people, sacrifice for others. We were always taught that like we could do anything we want in life, but like the most noble way to go would be to just earn enough money that you can sustain yourself, and then whatever you're doing professionally should be helping other people. And that's certainly the path. That's what guided me through my college years and first few years out of college. But I've totally deviated from that in recent years. And so I'm wondering on your end, like, how did you reach this point? Like, how did you develop your morality? How did you develop your principles? Was there a huge influence from your parents? Was it something you did on your own? Was it through experience? Like, how do you think about that?
I think that there's like a little bit of both, parents teaching you about, what's right and what's wrong. And obviously we make a lot of mistakes growing up. Actually, I don't want to say the word mistakes. I just want to we have a lot of learning experiences that we can like reflect on afterwards and be like, ooh, maybe I would have done
let me just interject
again.
real quick. This type of shit I'm talking about right here. You see how he just immediately said, I don't want to do mistakes? Like, this kind of dude Sebastian is, and that's what I want to be more like, man. Because I think the same philosophy, but I get bogged down and thinking like, man, I fucked up. But keep going. So
I think that like a lot of the times whenever you eat something or you drink something or you do something, you're going to feel it afterwards. Like, okay, I drank 10 beers last night. I have diarrhea and I feel really sick this morning. Okay, well, it's probably a bad idea for me to drink that much. Or if I did something that like I don't feel, I think about things too much, like, kind of like OCD a little bit too, or I'm just like, oh man, did I do the right thing? Well, it doesn't really feel like what I did was the right thing. Okay. And then I like sit on that, maybe like however long it needs to be thought about. And I was like, would I do it again? But I think that there's like a general principle of like, do good, try not to like make people upset, make them happy. If they need space, like don't overwhelm them. Like, those are things that you learn along the way when you're like a little kid and you're just like super excited and you want to make people happy or you want to tell jokes or whatever, and it's like, hey, this isn't the right time. You're like, okay, so there's a right time and there's a wrong time. So for me, it was just kind of, I think that my mom and my dad taught me a lot about, being good. They both came from Buenos Aires, and, it was never like a debate of like whether people should have like healthcare. It was like, or like, should there be like help for like the poor and the homeless? Like, it was like, obviously to us, it was like, oh yes, clearly there need to be like programs to help people who are having like mental health issues, drug addictions, like they get injured and they just can't work. Like, these types of programs need to exist. Programs for the elderly, programs for the handicapped, whatever it is. And then so like, that's separate, I think, in terms of like, all right, and just with like regular people, like how do you want yourself to be, like your effect on others to be too? Like in your day-to-day interaction, like what do I want this person to feel? I want them to feel happy. I want them to feel good. I want them to feel. And
you're conscious of that as you go throughout the day.
I try to be as conscious about it as I can. Yeah. And then if like sometimes I can just, being a teacher, you can just all of a sudden like a class like knocks you out of your mood and you just have to be like, all right, next period, like, man, forget all of that like feeling of like, this person yelling, not doing their work, or like being mean to you. Leave it behind and being like, okay, why am I feeling this way about what that person did, and how can I make sure that I'm not like transferring that emotion onto like any other people? But it's hard.
Have you always been that way? Did you like did this come about at a certain time? Was there like major development in terms of your moral character in college or anything like that?
I think that when I was a kid, I was like a sore winner.
Right.
And I was just kind of like a bit of a brat, and I didn't really like being those things. And so
when did you recognize that?
I think I started recognizing it really early on, that I was kind of, I remember my sister yelling at me, being like, you're a sore winner, and that like stood out to me. And just like all these other times where I was like, why am I like talking like this, or why am I behaving this way? Like, it doesn't like, that's not what I necessarily want to put out.
Yeah.
And so I guess even at like the age of like 14, 15, I remember I had to make New Year's resolutions. And I, like, one of the things that I still had the piece of paper up until like a week and a half ago before I like started packing everything up. It was like, be more chill, relaxed, like reserved. like be more of like a person who's like listening and paying attention instead of like the person who's always trying to like put out, I guess it's like throat chakra stuff.
Right.
So that was like something.
Is that 14 you put this list together?
Yeah.
Damn.
14, 15.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, this is something I need to like pay more attention to.
Right.
What else was on there? I also wanted to read the news every day. Yeah, that's the one that always stood out to me. Like the one that was like, hey, this is
right
a way that you got to live your life.
And then in terms of how that morphed itself into education, what inspired you to become an educator? I know you talked about, once you got to college, when you got to college, you wanted to do something that was helping other people, be it medicine or education or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, where was that shift from medicine into education and like working with children specifically? How did that inspiration come about?
I think that for the most part, I'm successful at like holding relationships with people. At DCI, I was like the soccer coach, but I'm also like the Dungeons and Dragons club leader. And being a huge nerd growing up and playing Magic the Gathering and Pokemon cards and video games, and then also being like the person who was like the athlete, the runner, the lifter, or whatever it was. Like, I just always felt that no matter what social group I was kind of like thrown into, I could always like, communicate and get along with whoever it was. And I thought that that was something that I could bring into a classroom where, to me, it's like the weirdos are my favorite kids. The jocks are my favorite kids. Like every little clique is like a group that like I can work with. And so I wanted to work with kids in particular because, at least in DC when I came here was 54% graduation rate. It was the lowest in the country. And I was like, well, I want to go and try to make that a little bit better. And I wanted to do that by teaching through history, especially because DC has no state representatives, no senators, doesn't even have statehood, which is something that it absolutely needs. And I wanted to show them like what they should be like, and what they have the rights to do, and how they should react if they see like some type of injustice, because those are like the people who are like most commonly affected by police brutality, racial profiling. So I wanted to help them with that. And
so you taught history for the first 3
years. I taught history for 3 years, but from the day that I arrived, actually, I got to work the first day, and they said, "So, Sebastian, did you know that you're going to be teaching history in Spanish?" And I said, "No, I didn't know that. I wish you had told me at the beginning of the summer so I could have planned ahead for this. Do you have like a textbook or like some stuff, like supplies that I could use?" And they're like, "No."
And this is a DC public schools, right?
This is a DC public school. And I was like, well, okay. So I just started teaching history in Spanish. And I did that for 2 years in DC public schools, and I went to DC International School. And then I was teaching history and Spanish there my first year, and then I kind of transitioned into health and PE. But those first 3 years, yeah, it was a wild ride.
Yeah, I bet, dude. And so you taught health and PE for
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
And so we worked together this past year together teaching health and PE. So 1 year on the job together. What was the transition? Why the transition from history to health and PE?
The transition presented itself before me, and I thought about it a lot, and I thought about the benefits and costs to each of them. And for one thing, I believe that like a person's rights has got to be one of the most important things that they need to learn about. But what good are the rights if you're dying at the age of 23 or contracting sexually transmitted diseases or type 2 diabetes, and you don't know how to take care of your body and you're just going to die at a young age? So I immediately thought like, well, it's really important for me to teach kids about health and how to live long, happy, healthy lives. And so that immediately was like, well, yeah, definitely something that I would be happy to show kids, like a way for them to accomplish that. And then there's just so many other cool things that came along with it. You get to be outside more often. The time that you got to spend with kids could be more about like a mentorship and a relationship thing, as well as the content in history. You can do that, but since you're pushing them so hard in these like primary source documents and reading and writing and critical thinking, that like they just don't want to like hang out with you all the time afterwards and get like some of the side knowledge that you can give them on like how to deal with issues and how to deal with life. So that was cool. Not to mention that I said the outdoor time, wearing sneakers was like something that I was super excited about. I couldn't believe that I got to wear sneakers and workout clothes to work every day. That was really hilarious. After having worn like a dress shirt and tie and dress shoes every day and being like, it was 95 degrees outside.
Yeah,
and I had to wear pants, and I'm seeing all these like teachers wearing like skirts or dresses. And I'm like, oh my god, why can't there be a male equivalent to that?
That's a whole other podcast, man. But man, dress and fashion just doesn't make any sense to me, man. Why are we like literally just putting a noose around our neck?
I wasn't a huge fan of wearing ties.
Yeah.
So that I appreciate it, but definitely not my number one motivator. It's just switching.
No, I think that was
a side gift.
That was the same motivation for why I transitioned to PE. I'd never taught PE before this past year. It kind of dawned on me. I was kind of stepping away from education already, and I was like, I'm going to give this one last shot to see if like I can stay in the game. And I was like, but I don't, I want to teach what I think are the most valuable skills there are, and that's taking care of your physical body. Like I think that should be everyone's number one priority in life.
Yep.
But for me, man, and I knew this before I even took the job at DC International, the PE job with you. My patience was already on empty with kids.
Yeah.
And so like at some point in my beginning of my education career, it was like I wanted to get into education because I thought that was the most effective way, an immediate way to have a positive impact on society, on the planet. But I never really enjoyed being around kids.
Yeah.
And so it was just, as the years kind of went on in education, the like fulfillment I was getting for the positive impact was starting to be outweighed by the annoyance I was experiencing from like being surrounded by fucking little half humans all day long.
Yeah.
In your case, however, and with this is what one of the several things, many things. DCI I think is a great school. That I thought was great about the school that we worked at this past year was like it seems like the teachers love being around kids, and I totally see that in you. Like you enjoy spending time with children. Is that?
Yeah, I think that there are like some kids who I enjoy way more than others.
Totally.
I think that there's like some kids that I can think about right now that make me want to like yank the hair out of my head and be like, oh man, they make my life so stressful. Mm. And then there's some kids that I'm like, oh my god, I would just go and sit down with this person and have a coffee or a tea and just like talk to them about the vast intricacies of life and just have like a super enjoyable conversation. But I think that there's like both ends of a spectrum, and as a teacher you don't get to like pick your students,
Right.
Your students are your students, and you do the best that you can with them. And sometimes you get to spend more time with like the kids that like sometimes inspire me. I'm like, wow, like, damn, this kid has their stuff so together. Like, I want to be like
more
that.
Like him. Totally,
I
experienced
like
that.
This person. I was like, you're a role model to me.
For real. There are those kids out there, especially at the school we taught. Well, the school we taught the past year is the first time I kind of experienced that, but they're out there and it's cool to see.
Yeah.
Did you have experience with kids prior?
Prior to teaching?
Yeah.
No.
So was it daunting at all thinking that
when I was in grad school, I taught, I did my student teaching, but prior to becoming a teacher, no, I hadn't decided.
Seems like a big decision to make, like without like extensive experience, even little brothers and sisters and shit. How did that?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that I couldn't teach elementary schoolers because I knew that I wasn't going to be there for that, But I knew that middle school or high school, actually, I originally went into it being like, I can never do anything less than high school. And so they were good. And then one of the issues that I encountered was that the students that I had at high school, they were just so far behind where they needed to be. I was like, man, I need to start getting to them earlier.
Right.
And that's why I moved into middle school. I was like, hoping that I could like, I noticed that a lot of kids started taking the path already in middle school towards one or the other. And it's like, okay, well, me in high school, I'm getting like less of a chance because so many of these students have already like committed to this idea.
Yeah, dude, that was my same experience, especially in rough areas, man. By the time like, some of these kids get to high school, even in middle school, it's like, fuck.
Yeah.
You are not only just academics, but socially, like, damn, you're in a kind of a deep hole here.
Yeah.
Tough to dig you out. So what did you envision your future in education to be? Obviously, you're moving to Shanghai. You're going to teach PE at a school there in Shanghai. So you'll be in the game for at least 2 more years. Like, how do you view your career in education going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty... I don't feel bad about where I'm at right now. I think going and teaching abroad is going to be like a really cool, fun, enlightening experience. And maybe it'll be something that I continue going and teaching abroad. Maybe it'll be moving into like school programming. Maybe it'll be coming back to the United States at some point and living closer to my family, working at schools there, or coming back and deciding that, I don't know, I want to start a carpentry business. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there.
Right.
But
like Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. You know, he and I are both Jewish, so it's good. I'm not too concerned about figuring out where I'm going to be in 2 years from now.
Okay.
I'm just going to go to China and try to have like the best experience that I can have when I'm there. And then maybe within a year, I'll think, okay, well, do I want to be here a year after this?
Right.
Or do I want to, go somewhere else? Or do I miss the States? What am I feeling right now? And so right now I just feel like excitement about going to China. So thinking past that is really hard.
I got you. But you definitely think it's possible that like you could stay in education post-China?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay. Dude, you constantly maintain a positive attitude. That's something I admire about you tremendously. Is that you're constantly optimistic. And like if I were in your situation right now, having spent 5 years in DC, and then I was going to move halfway across the world, definitely I'd be excited about it. But I think honestly, like my nostalgia and a little bit of sadness would outweigh everything. Like you are just, when I've talked to you over the past months and weeks, as this day is kind of coming up, you're literally moving tomorrow. I'm leaving here in like an hour. You're totally optimistic and like maintain this super shiny outlook. What is that? Like, do you feel any nostalgia? Do you feel any sadness? Or is this how you always are?
I've never been one who's like a misser. Like I'd go to summer camp and I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I miss my mom, or I miss my dad, or I miss my friends, or I miss this, or I miss that. I just kind of like get immersed in whatever it is that my next project is. And like, yes, I have like feelings of like, oh man, it would be great if like I got to see my mom or my dad, but it wasn't like something that was like tearing me down. I always felt like I could just like go and do, as long as there's like, I have a plan for ways of keeping myself, occupied and entertained and explore, whether it's like exploring or hiking or reading or practicing yoga. As long as I have like things that are making me happy, then I won't be sad about other things.
Right. Dude, I need to adopt that mindset. And I think that's like one of the most valuable lesson anyone's ever put on the podcast thus far, man. Like listeners out there, listen to that shit, man. He's not a misser, and that doesn't mean he doesn't love the people that he's not around, but he's in like grossing himself in the now and the present and what's happening and trying to make the most of the experience that's occurring at this moment, rather than reflecting on who's not there or what's not there or what location you're not in. I do the opposite so often, man. Like as right now, as I'm leaving DC, and I told you this, like I didn't sleep well last night either. I didn't sleep well the night before.
You were sleeping on the floor. So.
I was sleeping on the floor, but I slept in plenty. I can sleep anywhere, man. It's not what it was. It's an emotional thing. Yeah. Over the last few days, being back in DC, I've got all this, like, I want to say the biggest thing is, like, regret. Like, man, I could have done this better, especially in the relationship I got out of. I think it's best that we're not together, but it's like, man, I could have been so much of a better boyfriend to this girl. She deserved better. Like, it probably would have ended in the same way because I'm just not ready to settle down. But like I could have like focused more on that. Same thing with teaching. It was like as soon as the school year started, I knew I'm not going to stay in this job. But like I still could have like dedicated myself better to it. And so as I'm leaving now, I need a healthier mindset. Would be to adopt the mindset that you're in. Is like, okay, so what's next? I'm going on this like traveling journey. I'm doing this podcast exercise, like engross myself in that and like find satisfaction and happiness in that, rather than like these past few days, man, I'm just constantly thinking, like, fuck, what did I do wrong?
And
I should have done
normal.
this
I think
better.
that you should recognize and like recognize the emotions that you feel and think about, you know, when was the first time that you felt that way and how you would talk to yourself, like when you were, if you felt that way when you were like a kid. Like, what would you describe like the emotion that you're feeling now?
Regret.
Okay,
Regret and nostalgia.
So when was like the first time that you imagined that you were feeling regret
in my life?
Yeah.
Probably like graduating high school.
Okay. So if you were to see like your high school self now feeling that regret, feeling that nostalgia of like things lost, like what would you say to that kid?
I'd be like, dude, you got a fucking whole life ahead of you. You're a young man. Like, fuck it, move on.
What would you give him a hug? Would you like? Would you? What
Yeah, I'd probably give him a hug.
Would it be because there you when you said it, you were like, you sounded like very like sure in those words, but like, how do you think that he'd need to be talked to?
I think that's how he would need to be talked to, and I think that's how I need to be talked to, and I think in a lot of ways that comes from not growing up with a dad. Like I've gotten plenty of hugs and like warmth in my life.
So then say that to that kid every time that you're feeling that. Be like, hey, you got your whole life ahead of you. Like you that's what you need to say to yourself. Like the first time that you really feel that thing, like, hey, even though you're this 18-year-old kid who doesn't know what to do and has regrets or has nostalgia or whatever, like you got so much to live for, and then you just need to remind yourself of that every single time that you feel that emotion. Be like, hey, let me connect to like where it was that I felt this emotion really strongly when I was a kid, and how would I like move forward from that.
Damn. Sebastian Kreindel dropping knowledge on the pod, dude. Seriously, you might be at the top of the list of podcast guests so far, dude. This is exactly the kind of shit I want from the podcast, and like you're falling into it perfectly, man. Yeah, dude, and I think you do a fantastic job of doing that, and I don't know, it's super fucking inspiring. And like you just did, man, you can hop right in to explain to other people. You're a powerful being. So let's close out here talking about personal life. So what we talk like professionally, what you envision for yourself in the future. I grew up in the South. Essentially everyone that I grew up with is married and or like having children, own a home, started a very traditional adult life pretty immediately after college. I don't know, you haven't. Obviously, you're a young single dude. You're about to move halfway across the world. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't seem like you have any interest in settling down in the immediate future. That's how I live my life. How do you envision, like, your future and what you want to accomplish? Do you want to, personally, do you want to settle down at some point? Do you want to get married? Do you want to have kids? If so, like, how do you think about that?
I think that I'm open to the idea of having kids.
Okay.
But before I even get into having kids, I would have to be... I don't want to have kids by myself or raise a kid by myself. So it'd be finding like a partner who I felt like comfortable doing that with. Mm-hmm. Which, you know, I've had a lot of relationships and all of them have failed. So
you've had a lot of like monogamous committed relationships?
I've had a lot of them, yeah. But there's, you know, I think it's difficult to find like what it is that, you know, makes you the best you. Uh-huh. And I, you know, I guess that's a tough thing to find. I guess I've dated like a lot of teachers. Maybe I should date less teachers.
Yeah, I remember you said recently you were hanging out with like a new girl who wasn't like a committed thing, but a girl you had met, you were hanging out a little bit, and you were like, man, this is one of the first girls I've ever dated who's not like just like this type A personality.
Yeah.
And that's like, do you envision like that's the type of woman you want to be with in the future? I
think the type of person who I want to be with in the future is somebody who is excited to go out and do things and explore, go to concerts, go and travel, who's intellectually stimulating, somebody who wants to banter and joke around and you know, have fun. If there's a song on and they want to start singing random words to a new song, I want somebody who's going to play around, and that would be something that I would, I think, really like in somebody. There's like 4 or 5 things.
How do you look at marriage? Like, do you ever would you ever get like married in a traditional sense?
You know, I'm not going to say no because I don't. I don't want to say like I've already made the decision. I think that it's something that if you like meet the right person and you know you find satisfaction in the ways that you seek to find satisfaction from like a significant other, and that's something that tells you like, hey, this might be a person who it would be cool to have a, you know, long monogamous relationship with.
But it's not like a goal of yours that you have in mind.
It's not a goal. Actually, my dad sat me down the other day. We were at dinner in Boston, and he's like, hey, you know, you're 28, you're almost 29, you're going to have to start thinking about settling down. And I was like, Dad, don't think I have to settle down for another 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And you know, like, I don't want to, if I end up having kids, I don't want to have them when I'm, you know, 40 years old or anything like that. I'd rather have kids, you know, maybe mid-30s,
right.
36 or something would be like an ideal time, which gives me like enough time now to like, if I wanted to get on that track eventually at some point, figure it out. But if not, then I'm like just going to ride the wave that I,
right.
You know.
Yeah, I think I could do 40, man. As long as my semen's still viable, I think I could do
your
40
semen can be
dad.
viable for a very long time. But it's just like a question of like, okay, well, you have a kid when you're 40. Now all of a sudden you're like 58. You got like 6 years to retire, and
yeah, I'm not concerned about that. I'm more concerned about like, dude, while I can have like the energy and physical capacity, to just like be out there doing crazy shit, I want to do it without anything holding me back.
Yeah.
So it's like I feel like maybe around 50, I'm going to start like my energy level might reduce, and I'm going to have more desire to just like be in one place and chill and settle down, and this like fervent desire to travel may dissipate, and that's going to be more conducive to me being a better dad, I feel. But so the kid things too, it's kind of sounds like the marriage thing too. You're open to the idea.
I'm open to the idea of it,
but you're kind of just waiting to see how life unfolds.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, man. I like that because the people I grew up with, it seems like, man, and I've mentioned this in almost every podcast now, but it seems like, fuck, everyone had like this pre-prescribed idea of like what life was going to be like. And I keep saying this, but it's like I didn't get the memo, man. It's like I didn't realize that when we got to college, like that was supposed to be like us solidifying ourselves, because immediately after college, like we're settling down and living an adult life. We're buying a house, we're getting married, and we're starting a family. It seems like everyone that I grew up with, like, it doesn't seem like it like occurred super organically. Like, oh, this is what life brought to me. Nah, there's no way that could be, because every single one of you is doing the exact same thing. So that doesn't seem organic. That seems like you're following a prescription for life.
Yeah, and it could be that, and maybe it is organic for them, and you know, you'll never be able to see it truly from their perspective, but you can like talk to them, and if they say, you can take their word for it.
Totally, that's what I'm doing with this thing. That's exactly what I'm doing with this podcast. But you're providing a totally different voice, which I totally respect. All right, man. Anything else you need to get off your chest before you move to the other side of the planet?
Nah.
All right. Dude, this is fucking great. I love you, brother, man. It has been an absolute blessing to have you in my life this past year. You've been just, I don't know, a shining star every step of the way. Seriously, man. I'm getting like choked up thinking about it now. So thank you for being you, man, and keep it up, dude. For real, I'm seriously going to start crying.
I love you, man.
I love you too.
Hugs.
Hey man, I'm just a text message or a phone call away.
That's right, baby. You'll be around. Thank you, brother.
Yep.